foster care and unparalleled journey.
Strength for the powerless. Courage for the fearful. Hope and healing for wounded hearts. Hello and welcome back to Foster Care, an unparalleled journey with Jason.
And Amanda.
We have Jen Lilley with us. If you're not familiar with Jen Lilley, we can go over the entire discography, but I have a feeling we might be here for a while. It might take the whole podcast because I was looking her up on Wikipedia, and my goodness, Jen, you have quite a few things in your list of projects you've been a part of.
Yeah.
Most notably, a lot of stuff in the acting world. I mean, I hate to have to admit this, but I have seen Days of Our Lives a time or two.
You know, you're not the only one. I would say that like 45% of the audience is male, so you're in good company.
Well, it used to be I worked a shift where before I left for work, that was on TV and my wife would watch it. So we got to where we would sit and watch the show and then I had to hurry off to work right afterwards.
Yeah, she would.
So funny.
Hopefully John and Marlene are still doing well. I don't know. I haven't seen it since 2000.
It's been a good while.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we have our own soap opera in our lives. It's called Kids.
Yeah, lots of them.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I saw on Facebook the other day, I saw a post where I believe it was Dr. John DeGarmo, who we've interviewed before, was talking about working in Washington, D.C. with this gal named Jen Lilley. And I'm like, well, what's this? So I clicked on it, started looking around, went, holy cow, this looks like a story. So I listened to your podcast some, and I went, oh my goodness, like this is exactly our world. So first off, it's amazing to find somebody who not only lives in like that world of Hollywood stuff, but also has a heart for kids and speaks about it. Very outspoken. So what is the name of your podcast?
Thanks so much, Jason and Amanda. It's called Fostering Hope. So I'm a foster and adoptive parent myself, as well as a child advocate. And that's how I know Dr. John DeGarmo, who's incredible. And anyone listening to your podcast that hasn't heard his episode, I can already tell them that they need to go back and re-listen. So yeah, mine's called Fostering Hope, and it's to equip and inform and inspire people to become foster parents or get involved in some way. You know, not everybody can be a foster parent. Everybody can do something. And then it's also to encourage those who are already in the trenches of foster care to just keep going.
Amen. Because it does require some level of encouragement there for sure. I mean, that's one of the things that we did not realize what we were getting into when we first started. I don't think anybody really does. I mean, you're stepping into a journey. You don't know where it's exactly headed.
Right. Totally.
But yeah, there's a lot of those pieces where you meet a spot in the road and you go, wow, I don't know what to do. And it's amazing to have people who can speak to that in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely don't think that you can do foster care without some sort of foster care community, especially with like-minded foster parents. You know, anybody that knows anything about foster care knows that there's a lot of myths and misconceptions. But one of the common, I guess, stereotypes of foster care, as you all know, is that foster parents do it for the money, you know, and some of them do. And those are the parents that we want to get out of the game. You know, they shouldn't be foster parents. But I find that so many foster parents are in it for the right reasons because they just deeply love the kids. They care about, you know, society as a whole. As you all know, you know, a child that ages out of foster care is most likely going to become a statistic. And I don't want to desensitize or numb somebody down to becoming a statistic. But obviously, if we can't reunify these kids with their family and holistically heal that family, the birth family, you know, the next option is adoption. And when that doesn't happen, then the statistics are bleak. So it's just awesome to meet other like-minded foster parents who not only love that child, but also really love the birth family as well.
Hopefully you guys aren't hearing all the noise in our background. I have a 5 and a 6-year-old who are attempting to tear the house down at the moment. So hopefully our background noise isn't too distracting.
I can't hear a thing, but I also have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and my daughter just turned 1. So, you know, it's loud all the time in my house. So I didn't hear anything, but I'm also desensitized to it.
Yeah, we only have half of them home today. So
yeah,
so totally feel you.
Well, I have to ask, how did you find yourself pulled into the foster care into the foster care system. Is that something you've wanted to do for your whole life? I know I've met some people who said they wanted to do it as kids. They felt pulled towards it. Some of us more as adults. So what was your entry into it?
A little bit of both. For one, my parents were kind of informal foster parents growing up. They were never officially licensed foster parents because my dad was a judge. My mom was a director of a women and children's charity. And as you know, you should remain unbiased in a foster care case. And obviously those two job descriptions can maybe raise a lot of suspicion. So they were never official foster parents. So, but we did have people living in and out of our home growing up, which gave me a lot of empathy. I'm sure you guys hear as foster parents all the time, should I foster if I have my own biological children? How will that impact them? And those are prudent and real concerns. And I think they need to be explored and validated for sure. But I can only speak to my own childhood. For me, it opened up a huge door of empathy for helping other people. And then, so that was where the seed was planted. And then as I grew up, for one, I'm a Christian, and that really informs all of my decisions and my entire perspective on life. And, the Bible's really clear about we need to take care of children in distress and widows and orphans. And so I really feel that it's a mandate. If you're a Christian, then you need to care for these children. And children in foster care are not only helpless, but I think there are modern day orphans. Not to say that orphans don't exist, but a lot of them do exist in foster care. So, I became a child advocate in 2011 after learning a lot of the horrifying statistics in our country. And as one of my advocacy avenues, I was a special friend through Child Help, which if people aren't familiar with Child Help, they have to check out this charity. They're incredible. They've 92 cents of every dollar goes toward the program cost, which is pretty unprecedented. The founders, they're the original anti-child abuse and prevention charity here in the United States. They've rescued over 11 million children, and they've been nominated for 9 Nobel Peace Prizes. So they're pretty incredible. And their program is just amazing. They really take the kids that their next stop is juvenile delinquency because they've gone home to home, and they rehabilitate them fully. I mean, it's a rehabilitation center for children, but it's in a home type setting. So they have a program called Special Friends, which is like Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And I fell in love with one of my mentees, and she was facing reunification, which in her case, and I believe every child who's, if you've made it all the way up to Child Help, I don't think you should be reunified with your parent. I don't think that parent's ever going to get better. And these are the cases, these are the Gabriel Fernandez cases are the ones they handle, that are just, you're at death's door. So she was facing reunification, and I was like, not on my watch. And so I got my foster care license. My husband was on board, and we did not foster or adopt her. We weren't allowed to because of a lot of stupid reasons. I'm still in touch with her. She had a happy ending. She did not go back to mom. She went to another relative, which was a great choice. And we got my son, Caden, who was 4 months at the time, and now he's 4.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Sounds like a really neat program, because you are correct. Too often our children become statistics.
Absolutely. And there's really no need for that. We just need to recruit better foster parents, and then also train and equip them on how to advocate for their kids, and also make our representatives and caseworkers listen.
Absolutely. If we could keep foster parents, that would be a big help, because I hear it so often, the burnout, the tiredness, the not having any supports.
Yeah, 50% of actually, this is actually how I met Dr. DeGarmo. We were talking about foster parent retention, and the turnover rate is 50% quit after the first year. And those are the good ones. The good ones are the ones who quit, whose emotions are rightly involved, who are really loving the children. The ones who don't burn out are the ones that are quote unquote doing it for the money. And so that's the problem. So we've got to retain better foster parents for sure. And that's definitely the catalyst for my podcast.
2 things. Number one, people who are doing it for the money. Every time I hear that, I kind of laugh a little bit. I know, right? Well, and I don't know how other states do it exactly. The state of Missouri, it's obviously not one of their priorities, and they do their budgeting. I believe the reimbursement rate is somewhere just north of $200 a month. And if you can feed, clothe, and take care of a child for that much,
good luck.
God, you've got to have like 10 kids to to pay your mortgage and buy food. That's it.
I mean, exactly. So here, Jason, let me clear up that fog for you, because I would say the same thing. I was like, get a job part-time at McDonald's. I promise you're going to be laughing your way to the bank. You're going to be making so much more than as a foster parent. What are people talking about for the money? And I went to the National Foster Parents Association conference, I believe last year. I think this year they weren't able to have it because of COVID, as is everybody. And last year they had it in Orange County. So I went down for the day, and they had a program on the adoption assistance program. First of all, I didn't even know that your subsidization continued when you adopted. I thought, oh, that must be why people don't adopt, like they need that $200 a month or whatever minimal fee it is in order to keep going. So I went to that class to just kind of learn about that. And oh my gosh, I met a foster parent. I'm assuming, everyone in this room, in this little seminar, is going to be like a rock star. They're all adopting their kids. Clearly, they're at this conference for an amazing organization. All of our hearts are in the right place. This is awesome. I'm going to meet like so many cool people today. No, I met a woman after the whatever seminar, and she was like, yeah, so what you want to really do is get a D-rate kid. And I was like, what is a D-rate kid? And she's like, okay, so whether or not, this is literally what this foster parent said to me. I was like, we need to stop talking. She said, whether or not they have ADHD, whatever, that's a really popular one. Get them a diagnosis. If you can get your kid on psychotropic medicines, then your payment goes up to like $1,000 a month. And she was like, but then if you can get them into wraparound services, it goes up to like $2,500 a month. And if you can get them held back in school and get them in special education, it goes up to like $3,000 a month. She was like, so I have like 8 kids at $3,000 a month. She was like, I'm making so much money. I got to quit my job. And I was literally like, oh my God. Like, why are you here? You're a horrible person. I guess there is money in foster care. And those are the kind of people we need to get out. And that's not to say that, some of these children do come from obviously excruciating trauma. And you know what? Some mental instability, post-traumatic stress disorder. These are very real things that these children are struggling with. So that's not to say that some children don't need some sort of mental medication or support. Obviously, there's a place for that. But as you know, in any government system, it can be set up with the best intentions, but it gets abused. And those are the people we're talking about. I mean, it just blew my mind. It's like, why are we rewarding your child being held back in school? Why are you making your children a statistic? You horrible woman, please shut your mouth. I'm about to slap you.
Yeah, that story it just made my heart drop. I mean, our kids already come from a place of trauma.
Yep.
And anything else that led them to the system. Why would you try to purposely hold them back?
Exactly. I mean, we're here to heal them and make them not a statistic. So Jason, if that clears it up for you, apparently there is money in foster care. And I don't know. I go back and forth on wanting to talk to Congress about stuff like that. That's a pretty negative reward system. But there's a place for it. It's paved with good intention, and it's being abused.
That's the kind of thing that just makes you insane if you think about it for too long. But
totally.
On the other side of that, I do some work with a friend of mine. His name is John Williams. He runs a nonprofit called Life That Counts, where he works with a lot of teenage kids and middle school and high school age kids. And one of the programs that he's looking at, we've actually just submitted some funding for a program that's designed to help specifically kids who are in high school who look like they're going to age out of the foster care system without being able to get that full home, that one family to call their own before they age out. And the program is designed around the idea of doing a face-to-face mentoring type program, kind of on a platform like we're doing here with Zoom, where you can do face-to-face virtual connections with people. And we do this. I actually met John in a dad's group that we do exactly this on a regular basis every week. And it's a program designed specifically for those kids who've been through those hard places, who are in a hard, in a group home or in some sort of setting like that, so that they can learn this life skills that they need to be able to go out into the world and become valuable members of society, to change those numbers. Because I was looking up statistics just yesterday. I believe it was something like 50% of the kids who age out of the foster care system will experience homelessness.
Yep. It's 46% will end up homeless at least once by the age of 26. 97% will not go to college, and only 25% will graduate high school, let alone get a GED. And 50% will have a substance abuse problem. So, and then if they've experienced 5 or more homes in foster care, 5 or more placements, they have a 90% chance of ending up in prison. And so, and 7 out of 10 girls, I know all of these statistics because I just did a huge study for it that I presented on Capitol Hill. So I'm really acquainted, they're fresh in my mind. And then 7 out of 10 girls who age out of foster care will have a child by the age of 21 who will also end up in foster care. So, I mean, I have a huge heart right now for transitional age youth. My husband and I actually just hosted a transitional age youth for 6 months, and it was amazing. And it was like scary because I'm only 35 and she was 21, and it's like, that's kind of weird. Like I don't know how to play like a mom role to you. Like, I don't know whether you want me to be like a mentor or a friend or like a mom to you, but I wasn't going to let age stop me from helping her, And I think that we come up with so many excuses in our head, and that's not to say to not use prudence. I mean, I knew specifically because I asked the right questions that, it was going to be safe to have her in my household with my 3 young children. But at the same time, we shouldn't let things scare us.
Living a life based on fear is not much of a life, for sure.
That's right.
And that's one of the things that we've had to come to terms with. There's some things that we've learned aren't very healthy for our family. Teenagers are not my forte.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And I know people who do teenagers very well. My dad was one of those guys. He could mentor teen boys like nobody's business. And that's just not. Now, you give me a room with 33-year-olds in it, and we're going to be assaulting an ice cream stand real soon. I'll have like a whole little army of miniature munchkins ready to go do something wild and crazy and have fun. I'm totally okay with that. But that's what Amanda and I are wired for.
Right, exactly. And I want to see a lot of empty nesters help the transitional age youth, because I think that they would be so equipped to handle it in a really wonderful way.
I think you're right, because one of the things we've learned is, we have our older kids. We lost our oldest daughter 5 years ago, but we have two other kids about the same age, within a couple of years of each other there. And then we have our 2 middle kids who are currently 13 and 14. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we have our younger 2 who are 5 and 6 right now. And it seems like every time each one of these iterations we go through, these, especially the younger kids in our family, are going to have such better parents because we've done it so many times. And better than empty nesters to look to for people who've been through that experience with the kids, who've been through whatever struggles their kids have, because we all go through something, especially in those teen years. But to be able to understand it and hand that wisdom and knowledge and life experience to kids who need it, that's a real valuable resource that I don't think is being used.
Definitely.
You said 3 kids, right?
Yeah, 3 kids. I have a 4-year-old who, all of my kids, obviously, I love them the same. But just for sake of discrepancy on the podcast, my 4-year-old is adopted from foster care. My 2-year-old is his biological brother, who we're still in the process of adopting. And I just heard today that we finally got acknowledgement from the state. So hopefully that processes quickly. It was like unbelievable trying to get that acknowledgement. And then my 1-year-old is our biological daughter. So 2 boys and a girl.
So I think anybody with a brain in their head is going to look at that and go, how do you have a baby while you're going through all that? You've got a kid who's, even at a young age like that, who's adopted out of the foster care system, is going to have some levels of traumas in their life, and you're going to have some things to deal with around that. That's just normal. Every child does. But to have a baby as little as 1 that you're still taking care of, how do you manage all that? Especially because I have a good authority that you probably have kind of a busy life as well.
Oh, my schedule's insane. But, I looked at people like Dr. DeGarmo who have 11 children, and he's a doctor and he's a full-time advocate and he's written 10 books and his wife works full-time and they have 11 children. And so I'm like, okay. And he said to me, because we're both insanely busy, and he said to me, he was like, if you want to get something done, just give it to a busy person. Sometimes you do like the college thing where you're like, okay, I've got to pull almost an all-nighter because I have deadlines. You just figure it out, and like I said before we started recording, unfortunately with all these masks, I haven't been concerned about how yellow my teeth are getting, but I've been drinking much more coffee during COVID. So, you just figure it out. You just really figure it out. And I draw a lot of boundaries. Sometimes I have to tell people, I really can't fit anything else on my plate. But at the same time, you kind of just figure it out like you do in life. You just make it work. I can't say no to kids. I just can't. I can't. Like, I'll sleep when I'm dead or whatever. I won't need sleep. I don't know. I don't know what it looks like on the other side, really.
Personally, I don't worry too much about the whole the teeth whitening thing because, well, I have an industry that I work in that doesn't worry about that too much. But I'll give you my secret: iced coffee with a straw. You're good to go.
I just don't love iced coffee. That's my problem. I want it piping hot. That's what my husband says. So his name's Jason too. You guys get along on a lot of reasons.
So what was his involvement in the foster system? I know that's one of the things that I've been looking at a lot is I see so little engagement from foster fathers. And I don't think it's that they're not engaged in their lives. It's just that you don't hear about it. They don't talk about it much. Is it? Yeah. How is your husband connected with foster care?
He's awesome because he just is such a cheerleader and champion of mine. He's just along for the ride. I'm very A-type, extroverted. Don't tell me it can't be done. I'll run this all the way up to the White House if I have to get it done type person. It's just literally like you cross me when it comes to child welfare and a child's safety, and I will step over you and prove you wrong. So I'm very sassy and determined, and my husband is just the most even-keeled, even emotion. Like we never fight, but the only thing that we ever have really fought about is that I get really pumped up about things and he doesn't. And I'll be like, do you have an opinion on this? Like, do you feel anything about this? And that's why we're the perfect couple, because he's just like even keeled. And so he was really into the idea of fostering after he got past myths and concerns. Jason, like 51% of Americans, wrongfully thought that children in foster care were juvenile delinquents. We know that's not true. We know that they found themselves in a very broken system through no fault of their own, but because of severe child abuse and neglect. So once he really learned the truths to it, obviously he's also a Christian, and he was like, yeah, this is the right thing to do. And he also fell in love with the little girl that we mentor, and it was him that was like, we have to make sure she doesn't go back, like that she's going to die. And I was like, yeah, she's going to die. And he's like, we're taking that class. Like, I don't care what your filming schedule is. We have to get licensed. We have to save her. And I was like, yeah. So the only thing he really is passionate about is me, his family, and Jesus. So he is an awesome dad, and he's just along for the ride. He's extremely involved as a dad. He's extremely hands-on, but you're not going to see him really on social media, and you're not going to see him be a voice because he is like the quietest man you've ever met in your life.
Well, I can kind of compare myself to in a few of those places. I'll talk your ear off, but I don't get on. If you look at my personal Facebook page, if you find it, you'll find it kind of echoes in there. We do it with what we do here because we believe this is a worthy cause for people to get involved in. But my Facebook page, no, there's nothing on there about COVID. There's nothing on there about the presidential politics.
Right.
I'm not down for that kind of a
discussion.
Yeah.
A platform. Yeah.
Yeah. The discussion would be fine, except I know better than that on social media.
Except nobody discusses. They're like, well, I'm not going to hear anything you have to say. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to start a war. And I don't want to start a war unless it comes to kids. I like to poke people's buttons.
Well, you have to have a reason to do it. That's a valid reason.
Thanks.
So how long have you guys been fostering or involved in the system?
We got our foster care license in 2016 and then got our son Caden. But I've been a child advocate since 2011. That's when I really learned about just so many atrocities going on in the United States that people are starting to wake up to now. But we've been advocates since 2011.
We interview a lot of former foster youth, and I'm actually
That's awesome.
Working on one particular episode it's required a decent amount of editing because I wanted to sound just right, because this young lady has a story. Her name is Heather. If you can imagine a horrible thing to happen to a kid in foster care, she owns every part of that story. She's been through so much, and she talks about her walk through that and her journey out. And I forget how old she is, but she's into her early adulthood years, and she's trying to find her way through it. And it's just amazing to see people who go through that much trauma and difficulty. But it's also just mind-blowing that people have to go through that inside the foster care system, because whether we're talking about biological family members or even the foster home she was in, some of the trauma she experienced, it's a horrible thing. And so we're able to talk about this so that people can know about it. And hopefully, stories like yours and others can help inspire people to step into this, to become that foster parent, to make a difference in the world. Right.
Yeah. And not to keep bringing him up, but Dr. DeGarmo, for anyone who doesn't know, he is the founder and director of the Foster Care Institute, and they have a ton of amazing free resources online, so check them out. But he and I we've been talking like every day because we've been trying to work on foster care reform, and he just reminded me, like, what's something you all know and something your audience may know, but just it's always nice to kind of be reaffirmed when you just feel discouraged, is that while that child may not be with you forever, that's not the goal of foster care, but, it may be that you still had such a huge impact on that child's life. We hear that over and over again. Like, a lot of children remember that one foster parent that just really did make them feel loved. They felt love and stability for the first time in their life. And sometimes that one, encounter really helps them keep going and triumph over just unimaginable atrocities that happen in this system.
Yeah, we've had a couple of those kids come through. As a matter of fact, you can't really tell from looking at us, but there's tattoos all over. I've got I've portraits of our 7 children tattooed on my left arm over here around a family tree. I have another one tattooed over my heart, a young guy who's spent his first year life with us, and a couple kids tattooed on the other side of my chest who spent a year and a half with us. They were siblings, and some of the lessons that we learned from those kids, some of the things you can learn from just having provided a safe home, and the value that they bring into your family.
Absolutely.
The lessons they teach you. And I tell the story a lot, but I'll never forget the moment we sat down to dinner, and our 13-year-old daughter, when she was probably about 3, I think. We adopted her a couple of years after this when it was available, but I think she was 3. And we sat down to dinner, and she said, "Can I say the blessing?" I said, "Sure, baby." And so she sits down and folds her little 3-year-old hands, and she says, "Dear God, thank you that my new mommy and daddy haven't died."
Oh my God.
And talk about suck the air out of the room. Because she was talking about a life experience she'd already been through at that age.
Right.
I remember that day. It was a tough day at work for whatever reason. I was aggravated, frustrated about something silly, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Without even trying, she said, "Quit whining about the small stuff, dude. Pay attention to the things that matter."
Right.
That one moment stuck with me so deeply that I've learned so much more from these kids than I'll ever be able to teach them. I've given them so few things compared to what they've given me in knowledge and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
These kids have the ability to hand us things that we didn't even know we were missing.
Yeah, for sure. You hear as a foster parent, I'm sure all the time, like, "Oh, those children are so lucky to be in your house." And I'm always just like, no, we are so lucky that they get to be part of our family. We're so lucky. It's not the kids that are so lucky. We are so lucky that we got blessed with this child.
These kids weren't lucky to need to be in our home.
Yeah.
It's it's worthwhile to remember that, because these kids are going through something.
Yeah, for sure. And that's proves to the point. I mean, if we can rehabilitate these children, they can beat a lot of odds. I mean, they are resilient and they are creative because they already think outside the box and they're survivors. So they can really have such a positive impact on our society if we just give them the strength to keep going and the hope to keep going.
So what do you think is one of the lessons that you had, or most surprised that you learned from one of your kids, or an experience you had in the foster system?
I think something that's just, I guess, overwhelmingly confronting in foster care, that, maybe one way in your mind, but it's just really different to walk it out and exercise, is what I call, and what a lot of people call, playing middle mom. Obviously for you, it's playing middle dad. I don't know if you experienced that, but Caden and his brother have the same mom, and they weren't reunified for a reason. But I have learned to have such more empathy and love in my heart for her, because she's not a terrible person. It's just that she also came from foster care and she wasn't equipped to parent. She was not a willful child abuser. And I would tell her that, honey, if you are a willful child abuser, our conversations and interactions would be a lot different. And I think one day you could be an amazing mom. First, she was young, but I'm just saying the lesson of empathy that you're forced to exercise on a constant basis when you are being a monitor in the monitored visits, and having to, for me as a Christian, having to walk out your love, not just for the child, but for their entire family and their story, really is a little different than like, oh yeah, I love people because Jesus loved me. When you have to walk that out in the face of, someone that is putting your child in danger, or the child that you love while they're in your care, and throughout, like whether they're in your care or they leave your care, you still love that child. It's a different thing to be forced, to have empathy and love and compassion for them in the face of, inappropriate behavior, than it is to just sit in a church pew and be like, oh yeah, we love people. It's way different.
You are so right there. And it hasn't aired yet because I haven't even edited the episode yet. I just recorded one yesterday with a guy, Ruben J. If by the time people hear,
I know the name. Yeah.
Ruben does a lot of work with on radio and announcer work. He's done some work on a couple TV shows as correspondent stuff. Just a real neat guy, and he tells a story about having been a 6-month-old felon, because his mom was actually convicted. I think she was convicted, at least arrested. She was the driver in the getaway car for an armed robbery.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any connection with her, but he also has, through her, he has something like a dozen siblings or half siblings. Mm-hmm. And, to be able to walk through, as a foster parent, to walk through that journey where you're not just automatically shaming and hating those people.
Right.
Where you're trying to have some empathy to help them find a way. We deal with that with almost every case we've had. We've had close to 20 kids come to our home.
Wow. Yeah.
Stories are just, it's hard not to be. I mean, I grew up in a very fundamentalist church. And so judgment is one of the core values, I think, that they taught. I don't know.
My goodness.
Intentional. I don't know if that's what they were trying to teach. That's what I learned as a kid.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. And it's so easy to fall into that, our little guy.
It is.
Turtle's one of the ones that we've adopted. He's kind of a family placement, but when he came into care, he was tested. We told the judge, Your Honor, we know this woman. He needs a hair follicle test, because she had a chance. He's had a cleanout kit run through him by now, and his hair test came back positive for weed, coke, heroin, meth, and oxys. And he was one.
Right.
So how hard is it not to have hate in your heart at that moment? It's really easy to be very judgmental there.
For sure. I mean, I can't tell you how many visits I would leave and I would be crying. And I'm like, I don't know whether I'm more sad or mad right now. It's a mixed bag of emotions, because you have so much empathy and just sadness for that parent, because they're obviously going through something real, but you're mad at the same time that this child is just a byproduct of, that they're just suffering because of somebody else's poor decision. That it's a real mixed bag, foster care, for sure.
For sure. And Have you been able to reach any of the biological parents through the work that you've done with them to be able to help them find out what maybe not reunification is exactly, but how to get themselves in a place where they're capable of being a parent to the children that they have?
Yes and no. So I'm still really actively in touch with the boy's mom. I don't have them interact with her, but I check in on her a lot because she's young and she's a product of the system. And so when we got baby Jay, Caden's little brother, that's what we call him, his name starts with a J, she was really scared to see me in our monitored visits at the beginning. And through no other reason than, I think I'm the closest to a mother figure, appropriate mother figure she's ever had. And she's not that much. She's 21, 22. She's not that much younger than me. In perspective. So, but I think that she was just kind of intimidated because she wasn't sure how we would react, even though throughout Caden's visits, I've never done anything but love her. And so when we were at our first visit, I saw her and I could just read her really well. I think that's a huge advantage of being not only a Christian, but an actor, is I read people for a living. And so I could tell that she was just really intimidated. And so I just walked up to her and I hugged her and she just broke down sobbing. She was like, I was so scared to meet with you. And I was just like, okay, well, let's talk about it. What happened? And, so I check in on her a lot and, I've held her a lot of times and we've just sat there and cried together. And I've told her over and over again, you're going to be a great mom. You're going to be a great mom one day. Is a lie from the pit of hell that you can't be a mom. But you, honey, you have to get yourself together. You got to get a job. You've got to, leave the life. You've got to understand that it is never appropriate for a man to hit you. All of these things like domestic violence and foster care, there's a direct correlation. And until she learns that she has value and that just because she's a product of the system doesn't give somebody else a right to continue to abuse her the rest of her life, she's gonna just repeat the cycle of having children that end up in care. And it's not because she doesn't love her kids. She has to get a job. She's a smart girl, and I'm just you got to stay on the path. So I check in on her a lot. I've especially checked in on her a lot this year with COVID and all of it. Hey, do you have food? Do you feel safe? How are things going? So, hopefully I've made an impact in a positive way on her life, but I can't, who knows if I have.
We've learned is, we picked up in a pre-COVID world. We've picked up some kids down at the local children's division office a couple times, and sometimes they're biological parents there when we show up. And one of the things that really I think has helped us make those connections is, I mentioned having a couple of kids tattooed on me. I have more than a little bit, and my wife has some tattoos as well. And we showed up, and she'll show up with the car with the big car with all the kids. We have enough. We need a Suburban, and I'm coming from work or something. I show up riding on the Harley, and that. Being willing to show those pieces of who you are, being a real person, not the uber good, super mom, super dad looking people who are coming in to look down your nose, but to be able to walk in and have them look and make that connection to where they go, okay, I can see you as a real human. And that's how you make those connections with some bio parents.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think that's what they need to is, their mom and I would talk all the time, and she just always felt the social workers were against her. And it was no, they're not. I know these social workers, we're all rooting for you. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. No one can do your casework except for you. So, do it or don't. But, let's get this going. If you want me to adopt, I don't know. I couldn't say that to her because then that can be in a court of law. That can be presented as, I don't know, coercing the parent into something, but it's just in my mind, it's either do the casework and fight for your kid or let's get him some permanency. I don't know. It's frustrating. It's really hard to play middle parent, but nothing has really, what I would say, the Bible talks about fruits of the Spirit, which is evidence that you have God: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. And, being able to demonstrate those all the time in your life, obviously really hard, impossible without God, I think. And nothing has confronted me and fertilized my fruit of the spirit more than foster care. That's for sure.
I completely can agree with that, because it will test you in a lot of ways, for sure.
Oh, constant.
But,
yeah.
Talking about the bio parents, if you go back to some of our earlier episodes, if anybody wants to go back and look, I think it's a 3-part series we did with the woman, Amy. I think it was called Hope for Amy was the name of that series. And Amy was,
awesome.
She was, well, when the police knocked her front door down and put her and her husband and kids on the ground at gunpoint, they found somewhere around $10,000 worth of meth in her coat pocket, because
oh my gosh,
she was a full-blown dealer. And her supplier had been knocked over by the feds. Her name came up in a conversation. They passed it on to the state, and so they came knocking at her door with guns and grenades and stuff. And she did the work, though. And to hear that story is one of the things that I think is so very inspiring for parents, to hear that she did the work. And she mentioned she felt the same way about the workers to begin with.
Right. Of course. I mean, you take your child, you're going to be on guard. Yeah.
But over the course of time, she realized that they were really willing to be on her side as long as she was willing to work. And she actually had case managers come to her court appearance for the drug charges and talk to the judge and speak on her behalf. And today she has been several years clean and sober. She has more than one job. She takes care of her children. They're back in her home. She's made that full turn. And it's because she was able to finally connect with those people who are designed to help her. So I think that's something that we as foster parents have to always be aware of.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because we're in a case right now where we're not certain how it's going to turn out, but you're always looking for ways to encourage a bio parent to, hey, all you got to do is what they tell you to do. Let's step up. Let's move in the right direction. Let's find a way to encourage them to become the parents that we know they can be, so that they can change their world, their children's world, and generations to come. Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things that I think is inherent in our story is that desire for a legacy, to leave the world with a legacy that is so much different than what we brought into this world. So, we're going to change the world, whether we want to or not. We're going to leave a lasting impact. So let's get about the business of making sure that's a positive impact. Yeah, I completely agree. Well, I know that you have got an appointment to talk with some important people soon. I'm going to go talk to Congress. Yep. Again. That's not something that you normally say in a typical conversation for us. So, Yeah. But if there's anybody who seems like they have the knowledge and the experience and the facts to talk to Congress, I know that I've talked with Dr. DeGarmo in the past. I know he has that, and I'm certain you do as well after listening to you today. So I only hope that you guys can find the right ear to hear. Thank you. And be able to create a better world for kids who need help. Yeah, we do too. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And it's just always nice to connect to other like-minded foster parents. So you guys are incredible. Keep doing what you do. And I look forward to tuning into your podcast.
No, thank you so much. And thank you for being such a great advocate for children, because they need it. The cycle needs to break. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I will hopefully talk to you guys and reconnect with you soon. Absolutely. All right. Have a great day. You too. Bye. Bye. That was the sound of knowledge bombs being dropped by Jen Lilley today. Wow, we want to throw a huge shout out and a thank you to Jen Lilley for taking time out of her schedule when we know that she was getting ready to walk out of the interview and walk with Dr. John DeGarmo into Congress and advocate for children in care. What an amazing lady with a message to tell. So thanks a lot for coming on today, Jen. If you'd like to find out any more information about the things she talked about, all of her links will be in the show notes. Like I mentioned before, Apple Podcast does weird things. Sometimes they get a little wonky in the show notes and the links don't work. So if you can't get those, go ahead and head over to Spotify or one of the other platforms and look at it there. Or you can go to our website at Foster Care Nation. In the top right, you can click on podcast notes and just scroll down till you find her episode, and all the podcast notes with the links will be there. If you'd like to find us on our social media accounts, you can just search for Foster Care and Unparalleled Journey or Foster Care Nation, and you'll find us pretty much everywhere. We're on Instagram and Facebook
And I think there's a Twitter account out there with that name on it. Shoot us a message if you have a story to tell at fostercareuj@gmail.com. And if you'd like to join in with supporting us, the most powerful thing you can do is share our message with someone who you think would like to hear it. Send them an episode and tell them to subscribe, and do the same thing yourself if your platform allows you to subscribe. We will see you next week with another episode. We drop episodes every Tuesday morning. If you'd like to help us out monetarily, we'd love it. It'd be awesome. Patreon.com/fostercarenation. And that would be awesome. If not, we'll still see you next week. It's still free content. And as always,